Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I think it is realistic in the sense that AI is obviously a big part of the economic future in all around the world. And I think it's the right bet to make. So for that, I give him credit to understand the importance of AI and other future technologies that will in many ways help productivity in the economy in general. And it is definitely a sector where you want to be on the front of. And so for that, I give him a lot of credit. The concern is two things. One is one of the things you brought up was just headwinds, challenges like energy costs. And the second is the fact that when governments typically get involved too much, the outcomes are never good or rarely good.
But
There are
how about competition? Because
Excuse me?
as far as we understand that Britain will be going into a new field or a new industry, and which already is filled with competitors
Yeah,
and very very huge competitors,
right.
the US, the China, Japan, and what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think, they are coming in, you could argue, somewhat late into a very competitive sector that's already led by the US and followed by China. But I do think in a new sector like this, there's so much room for competition. The great technology improvements of the last 100 years, the first mover advantage is not really there. It's often the second mover, the third mover. And so I think again, I respect the fact that he understands how important AI is, but there are so many economic headwinds here in the UK. And what I would advise the Prime Minister to think about, or the government, is liberating the overall economy. And that will make AI investment and AI development much more attractive for the smartest and most innovative entrepreneurs. But right now, anyone in the world who's an innovator, a disruptor, why would they move to the United Kingdom, which is hostile to private sector development? And so maybe the prime minister is going to turn the battleship on this and make the UK a destination by encouraging or by investing. But that shouldn't come from the government sector typically. That should come from the private sector. And right now, this government is very hostile to the private sector. And so you mentioned energy costs. Right now, it costs businesses in the UK 5 times as much, not 5%, 500% more than businesses in the United States pay for energy. So how could you possibly develop an AI infrastructure when you're paying 5 times? Now, that might mean that they subsidize it and they pay for the energy, but that's just really disruptive to the economy, and it makes other consumers, other businesses pay even more. And so, this is something that the UK should consider liberating their economy and making it attractive to industries such as AI, but not just AI. And I think that's where they're going to go wrong here. They might promote something. When governments typically invest, it means they're misallocating. The private sector is a much better allocator of capital than the public sector. So I always become rather suspicious when governments decide to invest in certain things, whether it's chips or construction. It always ends up misallocating capital. So look, I think it's a good idea again, but with 5 times the energy costs, with much higher taxes than much of than their competition in the United States, for example, it makes it really difficult to attract innovators, to attract entrepreneurs. So
Mm.
that's my concern with this push. It's not the industry that they've chosen, but it better to let the market, the private sector allocate capital. And I'll give you an example. One of the really leading technologies here in the UK is fintech. And and that's not because the government invested in it. It's because of the proximity to Europe, more importantly, the proximity to Africa, which was really on the cutting edge of fintech 10 or 15 years ago. And
Mm.
so because it attracted entrepreneurs and there was some innovation, it became a real, I would argue, it made the UK a leading sector or leading innovator or leading home for fintech. But this hostility that's come to the private sector in the last decade with too much tax, too much regulation, the regulatory burden is really deafening here. And also the fact that if companies make too much money, for example, in the energy sector, they have what they call windfall taxes. So even though we had a conservative government here for 14 years, they surely, from an economic perspective, they surely behaved as a more of a mercantilist
Right.
or
Another argument here is that the AI Opportunities Action Plan includes AI growth zones and new data centers. Now, from your point of view, do you think or a key issue here with the AI adoption in government is accuracy and large language models? When we are speaking here about AI, and sometimes, of course, they are prone to errors. Now, can the AI really be trusted to handle the critical government functions here?
I think the answer is yes. I do think there'll be mistakes made along the way, and that happens with any innovative or new technology. But I think so much of government can be replaced by AI because it's fairly low tech, and there's probably too much government in this country. I can make that argument, but I do think you brought up another good point. The cost of developing artificial intelligence in this country will be so much higher. Again, going back to energy, one of the biggest input cost for data centers is energy. And because energy is so expensive here, why is it so expensive? Two reasons. One is the regulatory burden on the energy delivery companies, but more importantly, the fact that the UK depends on imports for energy. That 20 years ago, this country was energy independent. In 2005, they produced all the energy they needed here in the United Kingdom. That's changed dramatically. There's still a ban on no way to tap into natural gas resources
Right.
here in the UK. So these are things that are more big picture economics than specific to AI.